Welcome to this third session on Swar Studio. Now that you have gone through the first two courses, you must be having a very good hold on how to use Swar Studio to create really compelling songs. In this additional session, we are going to try to concentrate on some more advanced functionality that will help you use the full potential of the DAW. We are going to discover how to add new sounds engines and effects, how to use automations, how to optimize CPU usage, and much more. At the end of the course, you should be having all the tools required to create fully professional compositions with lots of tracks, even on modest home studio setups. So let's start. Swar Studio, like most DAWs, is extensible through plugins. You can use such plugins as new sound engines or as effects. We have already seen that a sound engine or virtual instrument plugins is one that receives MIDI events and outputs audio with the sound of the selected instrument or programs. An effect plugin, on the other hand, is one that receives audio input and transforms it in a certain way before returning it. A simple example is a reverb effect that specializes sound according to specific parameters. These two types of plugins are usually available in a certain number of standard formats, like VST, a format created by Steinberg; Audio Unit, a format designed by Apple; AAX, a format specific to Avid for their Pro Tools DAW. Swar Studio can import both VST and Audio Units formats. This is done in the Tools, Scan, Plugins menu. You will then see the Scan Plugins dialog showing the plugins that have been detected by Swar Studio so far. To scan for new plugins, click on the Options button and select the scan for the format you want, like Scan for New or Updated VST3 plugins. This will show you a screen with the folders to scan. You can add, remove, or update the folders to be considered. Then press Scan for the scanning process to start. This should go on smoothly unless Swar Studio detects a plugin that is problematic. In such case, you could be shown a warning message, but skipping it should allow the scanning to continue on the other valid plugins. The problematic plugin is put in an ignore list, so subsequent scans are not affected by it. Once the scanning is finished, you will see the plugin that were found as a list in the dialog. You can of course make an additional scan for a different format like Audio Units if you want. Any virtual instrument plugin successfully scanned is automatically added to the list of sound engines and can therefore be used in instrument tracks. As you can see here, not only our own synthesizer, Swar Plug and Swar Groove, but third-party ones as well, like Addictive Drums or Contact 5 have been added. You can customize them if you wish by doing the following: selecting a specific thumbnail image, checking or not the drum kit box. This flags the sound engine as being a drum kit, so MIDI events are not transposed but pitch shifted instead. We will explain that further in the course. Entering a default program number that will be set when you select the instrument in a track. This can be practical when the sound engine have multiple voices, but you want to automatically select a specific one. After making such changes, make sure to click on Apply button so that they are saved. You can then use these sound engines in the same way as the default ones in any instrument tracks. Clicking on the center of the thumbnail image will display the sound engine user interface for any additional changes required for the track. Needless to say, these are all preserved when the song is saved. Effects. on the other hand, can be added to tracks, both audio and instrument one, in the effects section at the bottom of the track header. Just drag the track bottom border or click on the downward arrow to reveal it. By default, this table is empty. Clicking on the plus button will show all available effects that can be selected. Click on the one you want and it will be added to the top of the table. You can add more that will then be appended to it. Audio in the track will be processed in the same order, the first effect first and so on. If you need a specific effect to be processed before another, you can just select it and click on upward arrow. This will allow you to define the exact order in which you want the audio flow to be processed. To reveal the effect user interface, select the corresponding line and click on the small rectangle icon. You will then be able to change any parameters of the effect directly. In this case, we have a reverb and we can adjust the parameters to simulate a large hall or instead a small room. Alright, so effects are cool and you may want to add them to many of your tracks. But as you do so, you must realize that each effect on each track adds to the processing burden. So, when you have large compositions with lots of tracks, this could be an issue. Remember the I/O buffer underrun issue we discussed in the first course, where the buffer passing through the DAW couldn't be fully loaded with sound in time, and where therefore creating clicks and static? This is what you may get if you add lots of effect to many tracks. Fortunately, there are few techniques to reduce the CPU consumption, which I am going to describe here. Before that, I need to introduce the third type of tracks called aux tracks. Aux or auxiliary tracks are helper tracks that don't produce their own audio the way audio and MIDI tracks do, but are there instead as channel to which you can route sound from other tracks. In Swar Studio, you can easily add a new aux track through the corresponding menu option or through the aux track icons on the toolbar. You can choose a mono or a stereo aux track. Another important concept when dealing with tracks is the notion of buses. Buses can be seen as a switchboard that helps you connect tracks between each other. You can select a bus or two if you are in a stereo track, as output for one of your tracks and as input for a different track. This allows you to transfer the audio flow across these tracks. Swar Studio includes 32 distinct buses, so you shouldn't ever be limited when trying to connect tracks. The buses can be seen here. A common use of these buses is for freezing tracks. MIDI tracks are very flexible because audio output is processed on the fly, according to different parameters like tempo, pitches, etc. But for the same reason, they are sometimes heavy in the terms of CPU consumption. When you have a large compositions, this can be a problem. That's where freezing a track becomes useful. When you freeze a track, you actually record the output of your MIDI track into a new audio track. You can then mute the original MIDI track or delete it if you won't require any further changes, so that it won't use any CPU. The new audio track will play the same output with very little power consumption. Swar Studio now includes an option to do this in simple click. It's done by right-clicking on the track and selecting Bounce Track to New Track. However, for the sake of demonstrating the use of buses, we are going to do it the traditional way. First of all, we select the buses in the output of the MIDI track. I will select buses 1 and 2, but any other buses would have worked the same way. Now, I add a new audio track, stereo, because my MIDI track was stereo, and select buses 1 and 2 as input. This way, any output from MIDI track will be routed into my audio track. The last step is to arm my audio track for recording and then click play. I now see the audio track includes a new loop with the exported sound of the MIDI track. I can then mute my MIDI track and my song will play the same way, but with less CPU consumption. Buses are also a great tool for grouping tracks. This can be another good way of saving CPU. Say you have multiple tracks for which you want to apply similar effects. Instead of adding the same effects on each track where they will need to do the job for each of them, you can group the track's output and then only apply the effects to that mix. To do that, you will need the aux track we introduced earlier. Just go on the tracks, aux track, and click on the studio. Now that we have our aux track, we will set its input as say bus 3 and 4. We can then go to all the tracks we want to group and set their output to these two buses like that. Now that this is done, we can go back to our aux track and add the effects we want, say reverb. Now when we play, the signal of all these tracks is mixed in the aux track and only then goes through the reverb effect, saving a lot of CPU. Another very interesting use of such a configuration is if you want to adjust levels of various tracks. Say you have various drums playing on different tracks. You would love to have a way of increasing or decreasing their volume altogether. You can do that with an aux track. Once you have adjusted the levels of the drum relative to each other, you can create a new aux track, name it as drum mix, and then route all the output from the various drums tracks to that using a buses pair. After that, you can adjust the level of the aux track and all drums volumes will increase, decrease accordingly. You can then also add effects specific to this drums ensemble without affecting other tracks. Now that we have explained aux tracks and buses, we can explore a last way of routing audio flow, that is through sends. Sends are simply additional output of your track that each have their own pan and gain controls. To add a new send, click on the plus button and select the buses you want to send into. Then, when the send is selected, you can adjust the volume and pan you want to output. So your track will continue sending its audio flow to the destination specified in output, but a copy of it modulated to the volume and pan you selected will be sent into these buses, which can be used into any receiving track for further processing like effects, etc. Alright, so we see that with buses, sends, and aux tracks, we can virtually connect any tracks to any other and the possibilities are endless. Swar Studio now also features automations. We can see automation as a way of recording the changes you apply to the various controls in the DAW over time. Like if you want to raise the volume of a track at a specific time, you can record the change so that it's applied every time you play the composition. In Swar Studio, the automation section is at the very bottom of the track header. You need to open it fully to see it, either by clicking on the small downward arrows or by dragging the border of the track header until it appears. The first toggle button is for displaying any existing automation curve. By default, it is off. Clicking on it, it will reveal any curve that is existing. In our case, we don't have any automation curve set yet. For that, we will first select the control we want to automate. Click on the drop down and select the parameter you want to modulate. Just note that for any instrument tracks, any modifiable parameters of the sound engine also appear in the list. You can modify this over time as well. In this case, we want to modulate the volume, so we will select Gain. The next step is for starting the recording of our automation. For that, we proceed in a similar way as for a normal recording. We arm the automation track here and then we press play. We can then modulate the gain at the moment we want. Okay, we see our gain curve now. When we play the composition again, we can see the gain value modulate accordingly. We can record additional automation for the same track. Say I now select pen, arm for recording, play, and now I can modulate my pen. Simple as that. The little pencil icon is for editing my curve points. I can drag over a part and then press delete to remove some section. I can also enter points edit mode and add new points manually. Of course, all such changes can be undone and redone. Finally, if I want to remove a whole automation curve, I can just click on the last icon with a cross. Now that we have covered most of the important functionality of Swar Studio, I would like to quickly explain some lesser things that can be very useful. The metronome is an important help when recording. You can ensure you stay on the beat this way. As in all DAWs, Swar Studio includes a metronome that follows the beat signature of your song. That signature can be updated here. By default, it's on 4x4, but you can change it, say, to 3x4 and the metronome will adapt playing accordingly. Another cool feature in Swar Studio is the pitch shift control for instrument tracks. You can see it by dragging the track header downwards. This allows you to pitch shift your track by a number of semitones. What is really convenient is that it works for both melodic sound engines by transposing the MIDI events and for drum kits sound engines where it pitch shifts the drum playing. You may also have noticed that each track and its loops have a different color. This is set by default, but you can change that color by clicking on the color bar at the right of the track image and selecting the color of your choice in the dialog. This can be very useful for grouping certain tracks together. Swar Studio also includes karaoke screens that allows you to add lyrics to your compositions and possibly sing along. The first step is to enter the lyrics and set each word or syllable to a particular time in the song. This is done in the Karaoke editor. You can launch that from View menu, Karaoke editor. The left side of this editor shows the progression of the song. You can select the track that is being displayed in the drop down over it. This makes it easier for synchronizing the words with the song. The right side of the pen is where you add your words. The first control, set number, allow you to have more than one lyrics defined for the song. This is very useful if you want to add lyrics in both English and Hindi. In our case, we will keep a single set, number 1. We can name it as a lyrics and keep the font as Arial. If we were entering Hindi lyrics, we could choose a Hindi font there. Now the process of adding lyrics is quite simple, but tedious. You need to add them syllable by syllable. So if I want to display "Tu hi meri sab hai," I would have to split that by syllable. Let's do that here. I first click add line, then type my first syllable in the word column. You can see that automatically an arrow appears on the left side. This shows where my syllable will show if I leave it like that. But I can adjust that by moving the arrow to exact location I want. The two checkboxes on the right specify if there should be a space after my syllable and or if there should be a new line. In this case, I have finished my word, so I will set a space and no new line. I now add a new row, type he as the word, drag the arrow to the position where the syllable should be shown, and so on. At the end of my song, the lyric look like this. I can now visualize them in karaoke mode as my song plays. For that, I close the karaoke editor and then show the karaoke pans. These are available by dragging the bar at the bottom or by clicking on the view menu, then on show hide karaoke view. I can now select my lyric set and it appears on the pan. Another pan is available for say another translation. When I start playback of the song, I will see that words are highlighted at the right position. Let the karaoke start. Alright, so this brings us to the conclusion of this third and last course on Swar Studio. In this course, we have seen how to use third-party synthesizers and effects, use aux tracks, use buzzes, use sends, reduce CPU load, automate tracks, create karaoke lyrics, and much more. By now, you should be expert in the field and should be able to create stunning songs using Swar Studio. If we forgot to explain anything or if you need any additional information, please email us to support@swarsystem.com and we will answer you swiftly. In the meantime, we wish you full success and inspiration with your compositions. Take care. Cheers.